Alex, welcome to your show.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much. Hey, this is my friend Carl, and we've just finished watching Disclosure Day together. And so we were going to just sit down and chat about the movie a little bit. And we thought, hey, we'll bring you in.
Let's film it and do it together.
That's
And we're in lovely downtown Farmington. And Alex texted me a couple hours ago and said, hey, you want to go watch the film today? How about now? So spontaneity is the spice of life. So we're here.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been posting on the whole disclosure events that are happening in Congress with David Fravor, David Grush, with his extraordinary testimony asserting that we've actually gathered not only alien materials, alien craft, but also biologics, by which he means alien creatures, non-human creatures. And so in my last post, we talked about, is that possibly true, or is it possibly a psyop, just a way of misleading or pointing our eyes away from more important things and towards something that's a little bit more sensational? But anyway, we're going to talk about the movie today. So what do you think about the movie, Carl?
Yeah, overall, I thought it was interesting. And right after, as the credits were rolling, I mentioned to you that this is at least the third film that Steven Spielberg has directed and written about this subject matter, aliens. So I just think that must be something that he wants to keep delving into and making films about.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard him say recently that what he really wants to do is shoot a Western.
Steven Spielberg,
Yeah,
Western, but
he says every time he saw Harrison Ford riding a horse on Raiders, on his Raider series, that all he wanted to do is shoot a Western.
Well, that's awesome, but he can't do a film about cowboys and aliens.
Well, there has been. That's true. That's true. It's been done. Cowboys and aliens. Too late. Yeah, that doesn't. So anyway, what comes to your mind? I know that you had mentioned that. Could we talk after the movie?
Yeah.
What kinds of? Well, let me ask you.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed about the movie is that it kind of like has represented a couple of times the idea that people will just fall apart with, this kind of disclosure. I don't find that to be, I don't think that's true.
You don't think it would mess up a lot of people's paradigms and perceptions?
Not really. And here's the problem with that. When you say mess up a lot of people, there's like 9 billion people on Earth. Yeah. And there's going to be a curve, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have people over here that are freaking out, people over here that are going, unless I touch one, I'm not believing it.
Right.
Even if you see it isn't enough, I got to touch it. I got to have a conversation with that. And then a lot of people in the middle that, unless it's revolutionary, and by revolutionary, I mean kind of in the sense of a revolutionary war, where you have an army coming and taking things over and beginning to do. If it's just the kind of thing it is now, then no, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. In fact, one of the lines in the movie was, "The world has fundamentally changed," or "the world has changed."
Yes. That the moment that these things, that the footage gets out and released.
And then newscaster says, the world has changed. And I thought, really? What about the world changed?
Well, I felt, one thing I thought was interesting in the moment was, so should we give a very quick couple sentence synopsis of the film in case, people kind of know what it is, but just briefly so they can understand. It's a small group of people that want to release controversial or conspiracy theory footage, 80 years worth of footage that the government has withheld from the public, and they want to get it out there for our benefit, for our good to know, because they believe the truth is out there. It should be known to us. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. So the idea, and it's not so much the government as much as it is this technology company. I forgot the name of it. It's a technology company that kind of like is the guardian of this information. And there are a group of technicians within that company that kind of rebel against that company and steal the information and want to release it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's that kind of scenario. But the idea that the government has been collecting data for 75 years or so is actually accurate. Since, are you familiar with Project Sign?
Break it down a little bit.
1947, right? Well, on June 24th, the summer of 1947, it's kind of like when everything begins. I believe it was June 24th. when a private pilot on the southwest slope of Mount Rainier, looking for a downed Marine Corps transport plane,
Okay.
spots 9 unidentified flying objects
Hmm.
that when he talked to news people, he described as appearing as saucers that were skipping on water.
Hmm.
And that's where the whole terminology of flying saucers emerges in the UFO conversation. 14 days later, Roswell happens.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so, and that, not only that, there are other things happening too. And so the Air Force, I believe it was, created a project called the codename Project Sign, which was, let's collect this data. And it was just basically, hey, let's find out what's going on. They didn't have a negative or skeptical point of view. It was more exploratory. Project Sign turned into Project Grudge.
Okay.
And Project Grudge mostly wanted to kind of downplay the whole UFO extraterrestrial thing. And that happened from 1947 to 1949. 3 years later, in 1952, Project Blue Book happened.
Hmm.
And Project Blue Book ran from, and a lot of people are familiar with Project Blue Book and Hynek and Jacques Vallée, all these personalities and characters that kind of are involved in Project Blue Book. That goes from 1952 to 1969. And so ever since then, the government and the agencies have been collecting data. And, it's one of those things where it's so obvious that there are unidentified flying objects and unidentified aerial phenomenon that government denying any knowledge of it, it was almost like it almost creates its own problem. If they'd have just said, yeah, there are things out there flying around, we don't know what they are, it probably would have created less heat. But when they start denying,
Right.
that they're aware of and studying this phenomenon, then you get a bunch of people start beginning to think, what are they hiding? What are they withholding? What are they not telling us?
Right.
Right. And probably, there, and more than one thing can be true at the same time. For example, maybe there are super secret military, advanced military technology that they want to keep secret. That can be true. And it can also be true that there are unidentified anomalous phenomenon that they have no explanation for. Both things can be true. Right? Just like another example of two things being true. Some people might be suspicious of how the Trump administration is releasing all these files, declassifying them right in the moment when the economy is in, and the Iran is not going well. And not that it's not going well, but it's not in and out and so easy like some were led to believe. And so more than one thing can be true at the same time. For example, he is delivering on a promise to be more transparent. And how convenient.
Right. So timing is one thing.
Exactly.
Right. But then distraction is another. Maybe sometimes with like Epstein files and things like that, whenever there's something going on over here, sometimes a strategic thing could be, what do you think of, look over here? Have you heard this big bombshell over here? So
and
there's that happens.
From a political perspective is, hey, we're killing two birds with one stone. We can take credit for delivering on a promise.
Okay.
Right. But the opponents will say, oh, that's just a distraction. Really, you're just trying to take our eyes away from the Epstein files and the Iran war, the war in Iran, and so on and so forth.
What I wanted to ask you was, did you see any parallels? I thought culturally wise, timing wise, even in our world, what was happening on the screen in their world at that time? I don't know how many spoilers we're allowed to give away or what we should talk about, but there was coming to the brink of an event that the world was at a major crisis point, right?
Yeah.
Wars and let's say a World War III type of scenario. And it was coming to a head, and there was a lot of tension and chaos happening in the world at that time, while this is also unfolding at that exact moment. And it felt like it wouldn't be a stretch, because right now, the moment it feels like we're in is filled with tension, filled with division, filled with nations raging against each other, like wars, rumors of wars, all these challenges.
Yeah.
And then we also have this discussion that's happening that's coming to the forefront as well. The timing just felt very interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that, a lot of it has to do with the person's personal perspective. Like, I don't particularly feel like the world is at any more of an edge than it has been many times in my life.
Okay.
I don't feel like.
So you've seen some of this before?
Worse. worse, than this before. And so for me, it's like, yeah, I don't. What's more prominent is how close we feel to all the negative information. Right, because it used to be, I mean, the news cycles, used to be weekly, daily, and now they're
minute by
minute by minute, with social media.
Yeah.
And like, for example, I personally do not feel highly polarized.
You don't?
I do not. That doesn't mean I don't recognize that there are many people in our culture that do feel highly polarized, and by virtue of that, actually are. So, and I say that as a person who actually collects information that I keep in a folder called the Second American Civil War. Because I keep collecting parallels between the conditions in the United States of America.
That's a whole other interesting discussion.
Yeah, the 1860s, relative, and comparing and contrasting that to our nation today. For example, just one interesting point of view is that back then, political ideology corresponded to geographical territory. The Republicans and the anti-slavery movements and party was in the North.
Yeah.
The Democrats and the pro-slavery sentiments were in the South. And so not only were they ideologically divided, but they were geographically divided. And so some people can make that
same case.
Yeah. It's the coasts versus the middle. Yeah. So,
and what's interesting, did you notice that this film took place in the Midwest predominantly? We're talking about
Kansas
City, Indiana, were the locales. So it was like a Midwest thing. So that had that vibe of that geographical location.
Yeah.
You also, it's inevitable that the discussion is going to come up on spirituality and faith in God. When it comes to this topic of extraterrestrial life, that's going to be always connected to it. And they didn't shy away from that in this film.
Yeah.
That was a huge imagery. That was in the film. The narrative was also, brought up too. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I've mentioned before on my podcast that I am a skeptic when it comes to the unidentified anomalous phenomenon issue, but I'm also an experiencer. So I'm not a skeptic in the sense that I'm not a skeptic in the sense that I disbelieve that there's something going on. I'm generally a skeptic about you. About what you've experienced.
Me or you?
Not you. You out there. As I hear someone tell their UFO story, and I go, nah, that's not it. However, but I am an experiencer, and I know experiencers. In fact,
break down what experiencer mean.
Yeah, an experiencer is someone who's had an encounter with the paranormal. Well, some people consider the UFO phenomena paranormal experience, but I don't necessarily limit it to that, though. Though I do think it might be partly that. But experiencers are people who basically had encounters, either a visual, confirmation of something, or even more. And I come from a family of experiencers. I mean, it follows my family: my mom, my sisters, my wife, me, my brother.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's how there are people say that that UFOs follow like a family line through the generations. It's like, I don't know.
I mean, you guys have always been unique and special, so it's like
I don't think that's true at all. No, I think that we are like routine and average by and large. And so, but go ahead.
Do you think that we're getting as the years progress in this discussion and the fascination will always continue? I feel like the bar of skepticism is getting lower and lower each year when when people share stories, experiencers, and the language that's all wrapped around it. I feel like before it'd be like immediately dismissed.
Yeah.
Immediately, we don't want to, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no such thing, right? We're very closed off immediately. Does you feel like the door is just gradually keep expanding on this? I feel like people are less likely to dismiss these days.
Yeah, see, here's the thing.
Why is that?
I don't think that there's been an increase in that. Here's remember researching this in the 80s and doing some research on polls and surveys of what people think about the paranormal and UFOs and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was a statistic that said that 3 out of every 4 Americans, right, believed in extraterrestrial intelligence or the paranormal.
In the 70s and 80s?
In the 80s. Yeah, so here's what I think has changed.
Well, E.T. helped that in 82.
Well, yeah. Well, a lot of things have helped it, but I think that what has changed is that the government can no longer pretend it doesn't know what's going on. right? So in other words, in that sense, it's catching up with everybody else.
So of course, are we getting smarter, or the technology is getting further and further?
Well, two things are happening at the same time. One is one of the most extraordinary features of the current UAP debate is that our technology for capturing images is super advanced. If you think, 50 years ago, it's word of mouth and maybe the occasional photograph.
Yeah.
And then the photograph and the video.
Yeah.
And then the video and the radar scanner. And now, Navy or Marine Corps fighter pilots catching them on their FLIR, cameras on the front of their fighter jets.
Sure.
So the technology has amped up, but that's one thing. But the second thing is that the leaning towards this kind of thing is undergirded by the human desire for transcendence, for something bigger. And so one of the things that I think could be happening, I mean, and again, when I say one of the things that I think could be happening, is my point of view is that more than one thing can be true at the same time. So one of the things that can be happening from a spiritual perspective is we could be seeing a return of the ancient gods.
Okay.
Right. So if you think about it, people in the ancient world who experience something paranormal, something extraordinary, something that's beyond human, use the language and concepts that their understanding of the world allow. Right? Cherubim, demons, angels, right? Yeah. Fire, wind, light, right? Whoa.
All right, keep it going. We're still back.
Yeah.
The wind is blowing this.
All right. Oh. Let me check to make sure we're in.
Stay with us. The wind is blowing our makeshift studio.
We're good.
Still good. Okay.
All right. It was starting to get good.
It was just when Alex was starting to really heat up here.
Yeah. So,
ancient gods.
Yeah, they would describe things in the language concepts that their worldviews and their state of development allowed them. But what if they had our language of technology, things that we actually have created, things that fly? Right? We have computers and chips and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and artificial intelligence. So how would they describe the phenomenon they experience if they had our language and our worldview? Well, I'll tell you how they would, the way we do. UFOs, UAPs, abductions, right? Because let's take the example of an abduction. If you ever compare the experience of an abduction and the experience of a demonic possession, they have some of the same points.
Okay.
Right. The loss of time, the loss of control, right. The feeling that you've been snagged or snatched. Sometimes you don't remember. Right. So I think that there are some commonalities. Now, here's my point of view again. More than one thing can be true at the same time. Perhaps it is possible for someone to be possessed by a malignant cancer spirit, and maybe there is something going on in terms of the abduction by interdimensional or extraterrestrial intelligences. There's no logical reason why both can't be true. Just because one is true doesn't mean the other one is nullified.
All right. It's the same way that humans can hold conflicting different emotions at the same time and be a both and thing.
Two things can be true at the same time. Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting to me, as someone who likes to think about the future a lot, is that the scriptures, the Bible, has a lot of principles in it that are, it's almost like one of my colleagues like to make the analogy of a time-released painkiller, right? You take a painkiller and it kind of releases the pain-killing agent, at different moments in time. The scripture's the same way, that there are moments where all of a sudden it becomes possible to see things that were always in the text, but not visible until now.
Would that require things like a revelation or an insight or?
Well, it would be like let's say, for example, in the movie, they talk about, she mentions Genesis.
Yeah.
Genesis says that, God created us as the supreme being.
As the supreme being.
I don't like the word supreme there.
Right.
At all, but
yeah, that's giving us a lot of credit.
Yeah, It's like really supreme. I don't feel that supreme, but if you think about it, think about this for a second, Carl, that when God in the Genesis tradition decides to create the humankind in his image, that must have terrified the invisible and angelic beings.
Okay.
You know why? Because more than likely, they had never seen God.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, God is saying, I'm going to create a human being in my image.
My likeness and my image.
And it must have terrified them to death. Right now, here's an interesting thing.
I hadn't thought of it like that.
Some of the traditions, right, about Adam and Eve in the garden describe Adam and Eve as having like almost, glowing or translucent being or a sense of self. And if you think about it, Adam and Eve, I don't think really qualify as the first humans.
Okay.
Right? Neither of them were born. They were created.
Yes.
They were not created in a world that was fallen.
Okay.
Right? In fact, they drop into this world through a portal, the entrance of which is guarded by an angel with a flaming sword.
Yes. You shall
right?
not
And now that they've dropped into this dimension of existence, they have the first humans, Cain and Abel.
Yes.
Now, so you can imagine, let's say 1,000 years from now, and let's just pretend that it's been established that there are extraterrestrial intelligences. Not only are they visiting Earth, they've been visiting Earth for a long time. We could see that scripture and read it in an entirely different way and light from the way we read it before.
If
right?
You'd be willing to.
It almost would, you'd be required to by the context, right? Like for example, because if you look at the scripture, right, we know that the scripture is very compressed. It'll state a line, one sentence, but that line is pregnant with generations of meaning. It's been refined and refined until it carries the weight of millennia in that line. So everything is compressed, the lines, but so are the personalities.
Right.
So, like for example, Cain and Abel.
And generations.
Right. Well, here's an example. Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
You have the compression, right, in two human beings, two personas. How do we know if that's the story of two personas, right, or of two intergalactic civilizations compressed in the story of two people? In other words, it's not the story of Earth only, but the story of the entire cosmos.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy. Yeah, and when Cain gets sent away, right, he has a mark on him so that he can be protected. So does that mean there's more people out in different areas? I don't know, because like, does that mean when you think of Adam and Eve's children, you only think they had like two, and then
Seth, yeah.
Seth, right? Are there people, or when is that true? Didn't he went out and he had a mark?
Yeah, he had a mark, but he was very industrious, right? He had children, and his children created music. He built cities. Right, his children domesticated animals. His children became iron workers and smiths. Right, very industrious. Had terrific kids. I don't know, maybe they were terrific kids, but they were industrious kids. So, but it could be that there's a sense in which stories that we're reading might be much bigger than we have ever imagined them to be. Maybe it's not just the story of Earth, but the story of the galaxy. Or the cosmos.
And I think that requires an active imagination to engage, to participate, to have these discussions and be open to that.
Totally. And in a world in which it's already been established that there are other civilizations out there, right? That reading all of a sudden becomes, oh yeah, sure, that's what it means. But before that happens, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, now you're just you're in sci-fi land now. Which is if we gave it that interpretation today, that might be, it's like, okay, it's a bit of a stretch. But in a world in which it's already established that we have extraterrestrial visits and visitors, it might not be.
So what was your takeaway from the film? Was there what parts did you enjoy? Was it like, what's your critique on it? What could they have done better? Was there anything that what was something that stuck with you?
Yeah,
from it.
Yeah, I have to admit nothing.
Okay.
No, I'm not a film critic or anything or an art critic or anything like that. In fact, I'm the opposite. I'm easily entertained by practically everything. I like everything. So I walked away, feeling, hey, I liked it. It's slower paced. The music is a little bit retro in a sense.
And Williams.
Yeah, right. It felt like it could have been scored around the time of Close Encounters.
Yeah.
And then of course there's not a lot of stuff that happens, right? It's mostly an arc of self-discovery of several people as they discover that the very ordinary things in their lives, like an encounter with an animal, is really a revelation of something extraordinary.
Yeah. It's a play out of classic Spielberg because instead of like a War of the Worlds thing where it's always showing aliens 90% of the time, it's showing less and less to keep the story going that way. You know what it made me think of, Alex? Was Jaws. Okay.
Mhm.
And you may have heard the story about the shark and the problems that Steven Spielberg was having when he was shooting Jaws. This mechanical shark was giving them so many problems that it was supposed to be envisioned a different way, the way they're going to portray and show the shark, the terror of it, okay? But they kept having so many issues with it not working that they had to pivot some point in the filming, and Steven Spielberg realized, wait a second, what we need to do is not show the shark as much to create that sense of terror and fear and not show you it is and let your imagination be terrified. I wonder if there were some cues from that, like instead of showing you the classic picture of aliens that we're all used to, that one we always have in our mind, right? Which there was a little bit of that, right? And there was some imagery of the ships and things like that, that spaceships and things like that we're used to. But I think I wonder if it's more effective to show less of it, to let your imagination fill in the gaps. And I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, that's it.
Overall, this is one of those things where if you're wondering why Alex got to speak most of it, because I'm along for the ride. And when we have these discussions, it's like, okay, sit down, strap in, hang on, let's go. So I'm just riding along with you, man.
Yeah, and based on what I've just said, I don't think this will ever see the light of day.
Hey, we reserve the right that we're never going to show it based upon Alex's performance, not mine.
Yeah, all right, that's good.